Hello and welcome to the Southbound Sports Show. I'm your host, Richie Leahy, here with my co-host, Matty B. And Super Bowl show today, and I'm drawing a blank. We did the pre-show. You can check that out on patreon.com/southboundsports, or just go to our website, southboundsports.com. We have all the information there. And make sure you subscribe to the show. We have a lot of new listeners. So definitely check it out. Reach out to us if there's anything you want us to cover, or hell, if you want to come on or get some guests, let us know. The high tempo part, we were talking about working out a little bit, so I'm going to try to shift away from that. The Big Ten 10K, I was hoping that it doesn't go virtual. And in the meantime, I'm looking up information, and I see your boys, Matt, Florida State, tweeting out their Big Ten resume about how they get the most viewership in the ACC. I was like, why is this coming up in my timeline? I need to know. I'm trying to look up Big Ten news, not Florida State. They said that they average over 3 million people per game, which seems like a pretty good number, right? I assume like a lot of the Big Ten, that's probably Nebraska type numbers, which is one of the selling points of getting Nebraska. And I've heard a lot of people say like, oh, Michigan would never accept a Florida State. And that's not true. I'm a Michigan guy. I would love to have Florida State in. I would love to have Miami in. I think the Big Ten needs some Southern teams. I don't think they need a complete pipeline. I think they need some Southern teams to help break the stranglehold on recruiting. Because right now they put the chips down, and they said like when most West Coast guys come from like LA, we're going to grab 2 LA schools, right? The next step in that, like the next evolution, would be to either grab schools in Texas or schools in Florida, or both, and try to keep the NFL approach going. Florida State's clearly the best option other than like Florida, which I don't think Florida would leave. The SEC, you never know, but like I also don't see Florida State wanting to get into the SEC just because of like the extra sports that the ACC does. It's much easier for teams to go from like the ACC to the Big Ten or vice versa, because they play a lot of more Olympic sports in those two conferences. Same with the Pac-12. The SEC has a limited amount of sports. So a lot of their teams like wrestle in the Big 12 or do other things in other conferences anyway. It's more of like a hyper-focused. And I know Florida State's hyper-focused on football, but to me, honestly, from an outside, and this could be biased because people say he's a Michigan guy, he's talking out his ass. But I think most teams, the Big Ten would be their bet of where they would want to go compared to the SEC. And it's twofold. You make more money. That's number one, right? And number two, it's an easier path to compete, right? I think like in terms of teams that can contribute or compete for a national championship, right now it's 2. I guess if you count Penn State. It's Ohio State and then Michigan in terms of teams that have been like making the playoffs. A couple of years ago with D'Antonio, you could throw Michigan State in there, maybe Wisconsin along the way, but they're not real contenders, right? They're not recruiting at the level that you need. And the SEC, there's 5 schools or so or more that are recruiting at national championship levels all the time. So, like, I think Florida State, they saw this success with the ACC where they came in and they dominated and won national championships right away, right? I don't see how they couldn't look at the Big Ten and say, you guys are doing like weird pod systems or unbalanced schedules or whatever. We want that. We want to get the Penn State pod. Right? Because Penn State, no matter how me and you talk about it all the time, no matter how you split it up, there's some teams going to have an easier path. And so why would you want to join up into a conference where your path is going to be Florida and Georgia and most likely Alabama or Auburn or someone like that's closer to your state, right? Where it's like, or join the Big Ten and get Maryland and Rutgers and Penn State. Where it's like, if we beat Penn State, hell, we're in, right? Because like it's Michigan's right now, it's like, hey, we beat Ohio State, we're in. If in that Eastern like division or whatever, if they go that route, which I think if they keep expanding, they're going to have to do like regional pods I don't see how anyone at Florida State could say, like, look, we joined that Eastern pod. Even if they invite Virginia or Virginia Tech or UNC or Duke or North Carolina State, those are all schools that Florida State usually beats anyway. Right? It's just, hey, a bunch of our old friends, we can beat up on them. And then all we have to do is beat Penn State, which I would assume Florida State could do most years, but I want to get your thoughts on it. What do you think?
Well, I've thought about this a lot of different ways, and I think I go back and forth because is the Big Ten a better fit, or is going to the SEC the better fit? And I mean, in theory, you know, there's the SEC that you're going to have to deal with Alabama and you're going to have to deal with Georgia. But I mean, if you're going to be a playoff caliber team and you're going to be making that push, you're going to run into at least one, if not both of those guys on a regular basis in the playoff anyhow. So, you know, I don't know. And, you know, I guess looking at this in a different way, Pitt, maybe this is a bad analogy, but having like Pitt and Syracuse and Boston College come in to the ACC, Pitt recently has won the ACC, but I feel like consistently, like the northern schools have kind of struggled since coming into the ACC consistently. That does Florida State being added into the Big Ten, where you're playing your Wisconsins and Minnesotas and even Michigan, that you're going to run these 2-3 tight end sets with fullbacks and heavy personnel. Does that align Florida State for success going into that situation where, you know, however many weeks out of the year you're going to play these heavier sets and getting guys banged up?
And that's the one thing where I don't think it really matters that much, because honestly, the big teams in the SEC play that style of football too. Like Georgia had tight ends galore, right? And they're just pounding people. Even whenever like Alabama's there, like they're running more of like the pro power set. I think it's really some of the teams that aren't as good that are kind of like trying to flesh it out. Like Mississippi State, like taking that step to try to go that direction. But to your point about winning, I honestly think that it's going to eventually become one conference. And it's going to be one super conference, which is right now it's looking like some version of the Big Ten. Now, whether some of those teams break away and they like tell Northwestern, like, you're out, go play in the Ivies or something, I don't know. Or if those teams are just lucky as hell and they just keep collecting their paychecks and they're the body bag games, right? They're like the Jets of the Big Ten or whatever the hell football becomes. Because it'll be like, the Big Ten will be like, they'll change their name to like big time college football or something stupid, right? So they can keep the B, the big, and then that will be their brand. And it'll just be whatever teams are there. Because like eventually, no matter what you say, like most teams are still going to be like, Ole Miss with Lane Kiffin there, awesome. Is Ole Miss bringing eyeballs? Like, hell no. Like the SEC, they're not going to be like, no TV network's going to say like, oh, the SEC is great, they have Ole Miss, right? Like they bring like nothing. Maryland brings more than what Ole Miss does, right? With the DC metro market, and same with Rutgers with New York. That's why they make more money than Ole Miss, because the SEC has like a hyper focused. That's why bringing in Texas is huge. They had A&M. If the Big Ten, like I keep saying, if the Big Ten wanted to make a power move, they would poach A&M. I don't think they could get Texas because they had their chance and would, for whatever reason, let Texas do its thing. But the Big Ten should just say like, hey, Florida State and A&M, we know you guys hate each other because like the Jimbo stuff. Just come join us and join the evil empire is basically what it will become. And then they could do an NFL overlay map where most of the NFL teams then would kind of line up with the Big Ten, right? Because there's not that many Southeastern NFL teams. But
well, and I think if the Big Ten were to take, say, Miami and Florida State, then I think the counterpunch by the SEC would have to be to look out west and try to go that direction to expand out of that, unless they want it to just be where they just rope off the southern part of the United States and just try to keep as many schools like that in play. Like maybe try to steal a Nebraska back.
I don't know. Like, I don't think if the Big Ten's bringing in Florida State and Miami, there's no way they're going to be able to poach a Nebraska. And even if Nebraska went there, like, I don't think Nebraska would be successful. I think Nebraska's kind of stuck. Like, the move would be to try to grab teams like Colorado while they're hot with Dion and hope that they stay hot. But, like, realistically, Oregon might be a needle mover. But, like, that has to be way worse than, like, grabbing UCLA and USC. At least it's easy to fly into LA. Right? Not Eugene, Oregon. And that's not a knock on them. It's just like, you're going to be the team that's way out away from everybody else.
Or maybe it's really easy to get there because I've never been there. Maybe that's like the smoothest airport in the world.
Well, I always see West Virginia people like, we need our own airport. We can't have teams flying in the pit if we're going to make a big-time conference, baby. Like, that was like one of their things they were pitching to get into the SEC. And I'm like, to be honest, that's kind of like what I would think the SEC's move would be, is to try to get into Big Ten territory. Like, if I wouldn't go out west, honestly, I would try to get West Virginia, I would try to get Pitt, and I would try to get teams like that. I would try to get Cincinnati and try to take some people from Ohio State, right? Because then you're taking the teams and saying, like, hey, you want to be the best, you can play in the SEC. We have teams in these states where right now, Ohio, like Kentucky's trying to recruit from Ohio, but their coach was complaining like a week or two ago about Michigan's coaches and their recruiting. And he like tweeted something out about like, it's clear that their head coach doesn't even want to be coaching in college. He wants to go to the NFL, yet people are still signing up with him. It's insane. But it's like, Michigan was just in the playoffs, buddy. Of course they're going to have their pick of Ohio players. No one goes, who does Kentucky play in Ohio? Right? Like, it's an easier sell to tell their family, like, yo, we play Ohio State and it's the biggest game in the country every single year. Like, Kentucky will never compete with that. If they get Cincinnati or someone, maybe. But even then, I think you have to pick and choose. Like, do you take a gamble on a Kansas for basketball? Like, what's going to be their counterpunch? Because ESPN right now, they're bleeding money still. And so, like, are they going to keep investing in the SEC? That's the other big thing people don't talk about. The Big Ten's broken away from the ESPN stranglehold right now. So, to me, they're sitting pretty. They have NBC, Fox, and CBS all licking their chops. Meanwhile, the SEC abandoned CBS, right? So, no more, like, primetime CBS game. All of the SEC games are going to be on ESPN. That's why the Texas and Oklahoma, they were supposed, by last high tempo was related. It was like Texas and Oklahoma tried to get out to move to the SEC early, but the Michigan and Ohio State games they had scheduled were the holdup. Fox knows that Ohio State and Michigan bring in more viewers than what Texas and Oklahoma traditionally get, and they didn't want them to cancel that game going to the SEC, which to me is kind of like an interesting move, right? Who would want to go play an SEC schedule and then also play Michigan and Ohio State? Or I guess it's one, it's or the other. I can't remember who. I think Michigan plays Texas one year and then Oklahoma the next. I think it rotates like that. And then they play the Ohio State the opposite, which was a great like Big 12, Big 10 crossover, right? But now you're like, hey, we also have to play Alabama and LSU. Awesome. Like, great scheduling move. Could you imagine? Because you were talking about, like, well, you got to play the best to beat the best. But to me, it's more of a game like, come to the Big Ten, have your team stay healthy, right? Who cares if you beat Alabama and Georgia in the regular season if you lose to them again in the playoff? You only have to beat them once if you're in the Big Ten, right? Come through, be healthy, win your primetime game against Penn State, and then play in the Big Ten championship, or if they have like a 4-team playoff, or I don't know how they're going to do that. But like,
No, but you know how this would go in. Like, they're not going to allow Florida State to come in and then set them up with the Rutgers and Northwestern pod. Like, they would definitely be in there with like Michigan and Ohio State.
No, I'm telling you, I think that Michigan and Ohio State want to be in their own pod, and they want Penn State out. And this is just on my facts. Like, they've tried to do it with like having crossover games weirdly with like Penn State and Nebraska, and then did the rivalry game with Penn State and Michigan State. It's much more natural to have an Eastern pod where Florida State, Miami, Penn State, Rutgers, Maryland, and say like an Indiana, right? Yeah, you have a bunch of cupcake games, but like, is that really any different? Then I guess Indiana might end up in the Ohio State, Michigan like pod. But is it any real difference compared to like Michigan and Ohio State playing Illinois, Indiana, Northwestern? Like, no, it's not. Like, they get their traditional body bag games, and then they're going to play, and then they're going to play the winner of the Eastern pod or maybe the Western pod, or like the Iowa, we only want to score 25 points a game pod. Where it's like, hey, you could be the OC there, Matt. Could you imagine if that was your baseline? I almost forgot. Iowa, they bring back Brian Ferentz. And I mean, I always loved Iowa. I love Kirk Ferentz growing up. He's one of like my hero coaches. And just to see this, it's like, that's such a slap in the face, man. And Iowa fans have to be pissed off, right? I don't know. Like, if I was an alum of Iowa and they called me and they were like, hey, bro, we need some donations. NIL's kicking our ass. I'd say, fire Brian Ferentz. How can you have like the 120th ranked offense and then you say, not only are we doubling down, but we're going to give him a quota that anybody could hit? Because I saw a lawyer post, some Iowa guy, he was like really pissed off because he said in the contract, it doesn't even specify that the offense needs to score the points. And Iowa's defense averaged like 7 points a game last year. So in theory, if he scored 3 touchdowns a game and the defense scored 1, he would get his quota. Or it could even be worse. It's like 1 touchdown by the defense, 2 by the offense, and a field goal or 2.
But I think overall, when you factor in that 25-point, like if you put that on that extra 25 points onto what Iowa's record was, I think it pushes them to like 11-2 on the year. Or like if you're upholding that 25 point a game like rule or average for them, like it pushes their win total to 11-2. So, you know, if as a whole, if they're scoring more points, there's going to be more opportunities to tack on more, because teams are going to, if you're playing from behind, maybe you get teams out of their comfort zone, which leads to more turnovers and, you know, more point opportunities.
And I'm just saying, I agree with what you're saying. And getting 11-2 right now is like perfect. That's all they need, because the West is like garbage. Now, if they get rid of divisions, then I think they start to make other moves. Because like getting into the pods, like I said, it's kind of weird. Like I don't know how they could do it. Like if they do a 3-way where you have a traditional Big Ten with like, hey, this is going to be headed up by Michigan and Ohio State. They have the Eastern side, and I'm bringing the Eastern side in because I really think that's how they're going to recruit Notre Dame. Like I eventually think Notre Dame probably gets thrown in with Miami and Florida State for whatever reason. And then they keep the rivalry game with USC, and that's it. But if they only have like enough teams, like if it's 18 teams or something weird, do they have 3 divisions? And they take the top 2 records and play? And they have like a consolation game with the winner of the other division and like the next best record or something? That's the only way I can think that it makes sense. Because like, hey, Florida State wins the East, Michigan wins the middle, or whatever the hell they call it, and then USC wins the West. But Ohio State is only losses to Michigan, so like they're the 4th team. And then they don't even play the Big Ten championship game. They just play a consolation game with Ohio State and whatever the 3rd ranked team would be. Like last year, it would have been, I guess Penn State probably would have won that division. So USC would have played Michigan in the championship game, and then Penn State would have played Ohio State in the consolation game as a rematch. Would it work for TV? I'm sure as hell it would. Could you imagine a Saturday championship game where the lead-in game is an Ohio State game and then the final is a Michigan game at night on Fox or whatever? That would kill ratings. I should write this up. I guess Big Ten doesn't have a commissioner, though, right? I think the guy went to the Bears, didn't he?
I think he might have.
I don't think we talked about it, but that's all I had. High tempo, I went super long, but college football, it's the offseason, basically. I don't have much for the NFL. It's just a Super Bowl show. You have anything else for high tempo, or you want to talk more about Florida State? Go ahead, dude.
I think they're when I look at from the rivalry perspective, and you look at what is going on in Miami, what a mess. They hired Gaddis, they fired Gaddis, they hired Steele, and now Steele leaves to be the next defensive coordinator to Alabama. So they're basically starting back over, Cristobal starting back over again. You know, they were paying so much for this recruiting class, and now it looks like they're really not hitting their stride on next year's cycle, and it's just absolute clown show. And I'm glad that, you know, when you look at the storm that Norvell inherited, that to have Florida State in the position that they're in with as many returning guys, like I think they're a legitimate playoff contending team this year. That it boggles my mind to see how fast that transformation happened, because there's a lot of programs that I think have been in situations where they've had coaching turnover and they haven't been able to take the necessary growth to keep recruiting at a high end. And people say, "Oh, it's the portal." But I think at some point you have to be able just to bring in the recruits, but you're not going to consistently get them to commit and get on campus unless you're really putting a quality product on the field.
Well, that's the one thing that I think people overlook. It's like you have to win for a long period of time, like it seems like, to get caught up. Like, look at Kirby Smart. He took over a team that was perennially winning the East, right? Like, Mark Richt was there forever, and he was winning a lot. And so it still took him a while to build up, and they still had to lose 2 playoff games or whatever, 1 playoff game, right? And then they finally got back, and Michigan's a good parallel. Like, they were close when Harbaugh came in, had to reload, now back-to-back playoffs. What's another team? Dabo, I always bring him up. Took him forever to get there. Now he's like in the maintenance phase, and that's where Michigan's kind of at. Michigan has one solid team, like everyone's coming back from a playoff team. Like, that's unheard of, let alone right there. So who knows what the drop-off's going to be, but like Norvell, I could see them making the playoffs this year, and then it comes down to how do they show? Is it going to be close, or are they going to be able to compete? And then how do they build off that? Like, you have to take that next step. Like, it takes a while, I think. Unless you're like LSU and you just catch lightning in a bottle with like a Heisman QB. That seems to be the other route to go, right?
Yeah.
I mean, Clemson's kind of the same. You don't have to recruit at the top level if you have Heisman guys. You could even say the same with Michigan. Heisman running back can easily overlook a lot of things. That guy gets hurt, your team falls off, but he comes back. It's like, all right, ready to rock now. You just need one guy that's better than everyone else to push you up, I think. Unless you're loaded like Georgia. But, all right. Anything else you have?
No.
All right, my man Tom Brady retired after I speculated last week that he was going to the 49ers. don't count him out yet, right? He retired last year, came back. I think that a lot of teams are going to be looking for a quarterback that think they're close. The main one is the 49ers. What do they do? Right? Aaron Rodgers is the other guy you have to keep your eye on, because I've been hearing that the 49ers are kind of interested in possibly working on a deal with Green Bay. I think Aaron Rodgers is already signed.
He outright said he's not going to San Fran.
Did he?
Yeah, he was on one of the golf pro-am things, and they're like, "Is there anything you want to comment on it?" He said, "I'm not going to San Fran."
Because I've heard people deny stuff before.
I think if he's granted a release, I could see him going to the Raiders and reuniting with Devontae Adams.
Now, that would be an interesting option. I'm just looking for a team that could win right now. It would be like a Peyton Manning Super Bowl win, like when he went to the loaded Broncos team and didn't really do anything. And then they won that one Super Bowl and they lost the other one. Rodgers could go to the 49ers. I don't know how long everyone's locked up. But that's the one thing. It's like, hey, where are you going to go? The Raiders would be an interesting choice to me because I don't really think they're Super Bowl ready. And that's another, the knock on Aaron is that he only has one Super Bowl. Where Tom Brady's driven. Someone said that they knew Tom Brady was going to retire after their last game, or the playoff game, where they were down, they got the onside kick, and on the sideline he was just sitting there like he wasn't running back out on the field like normal. And I was like, that doesn't seem right, because they were down 20-something points or whatever. And there's a minute left. So how'd he be super pumped? It's not like they were down one touchdown, right?
Yeah.
So that's a weird take. I'm gonna nitpick one really random body language thing. He was probably pissed because they were not even close. And he was probably thinking I'm not coming back to Tampa Bay.
But I just thought it was kind of it was interesting that he announced that he was going to retire, because I would think with him being with all the stuff with his personal life and his wife publicly saying he needs to retire to be with his family, and he's just nah. I would think just out of spite he would end up somewhere else for at least another year. Just no, it wasn't just a strong arm move against my wife, publicly trying to get me to retire. I can play in the NFL as long as I want and ride out another season.
And that's where, I don't know, he has to come back to be able to win. I don't think he likes getting hit all the time, right? And with Tampa Bay's line issues, they had pressure all the time. And that's where I think if he can pick and choose, I don't think he has the issue that Aaron Rodgers has, where he comments on the 49ers, but is that just so that there's no tampering type issues, right? He's I'm not going to the 49ers. Meanwhile, in the summer, next thing we know, he's at the 49ers camp, right? Tom Brady could be the same thing. I think Tom Brady could his contract's over maybe, because I think he's been signing year by year, right? Maybe I'm wrong. But I thought Tom Brady was a free agent.
And he very well could be.
But, yeah, I don't know. But that's my thing. Tom Brady, right after I speculate with him, he goes off. But, yeah, the 49er stuff, I could see everyone wanting to be there, because that seems like such an easy win. And maybe not. Maybe they don't like Shanahan. Right? That's the reason Peyton Manning didn't go to the 49ers last time. He didn't like Harbaugh. How different would it have been if Harbaugh had Peyton Manning in a Super Bowl win instead of Kaepernick? History would be completely different. Anything else? Well, let's do it. Do you think he retires or he comes back or not? Do you think he's done for good?
It's such a weird offseason that I think he's willing to. I think he would be willing to entertain the right place and the right fit. The benefit for him right now is that I think he holds the cards, so he can look at some of these places and say, if I sign, these are people that you need to look at and try to assemble like the necessary, like the way he configured things when he went to Tampa, where they pulled in Fournette, they pulled in Gronk, they pulled in AB. Like they were looking at all these different pieces to gather around him offensively to win right now. And when he stepped in, everything was ready to go. And I think like that's kind of the situation where he doesn't necessarily have to sign anywhere, but for teams that are interested, he can say, this is what it's going to take. Like, these are the pieces I need, because it's not like he's going to go in and learn somebody else's scheme. Like, he's going to be in that Manning mold where he's running his stuff, and everyone else is going to cater around, what his style.
That's why I don't think he's done yet. He told Fox he wasn't coming back. He wasn't going to start in the booth till 2024. And that seems like very specific. Like, if he can find a team, he's going to be back. Now, who knows what the other teams are doing? I don't know. But, like, the rumors of him, like, wanting to go to the Raiders, I think those were wrong because, like you said, he went to a place that was ready to win right now. And I think he has to look around and say, like, who has the best line? Where can I go? If he wins the Super Bowl with 3 different teams, that would be insane. And that's what's going to happen. And maybe Aaron Rodgers is just downplaying it because maybe he thinks Tom Brady's going there. Because if I was the Niners, my first pick would be Tom Brady. I don't care about anything else. I think all you need is a game manager that can win the game.
But I don't know with the Shanahan system that Brady's going to match that. Like, he's not scrambling on bootlegs. Are you kidding me? Like, so much of that passing game is play action. I mean, I think, if anything, him pairing up with McDaniels would make more sense in Las Vegas. Like, that would give him an immediate push because it's the same offense that he's been running. Like,
but that team though is loaded.
Oh, I agree, but I don't know that they're gonna, like. And I mean, you could say the same thing. Like, does he go to, like, the Rams? Just say, like, Stafford had issues with being injured. Like, does he go there?
I just think the 49ers team is so loaded. Like, compared to, like, nothing against, like, Fournette or whoever he's checking down to. Like, checking down to, like, McCaffrey and then having Deebo Samuel there and having Kittle takes care of, like, the Gronk type thing and even some of the other, like, play action type stuff. They worked it with Purdy, and I think they can work it around him to get to the point where, hey, we can just tweak our system a little bit for 1 year for a Super Bowl for everybody. Because that's like the monkey off the back. Remember Steve Young taking the monkey off his back? I think Shanahan needs to get the monkey off his back. How close can you get? And then this year, quarterback injuries just killed your team. Like, why not bring in Tom Brady for a year and have Purdy learn under him? That would be the dream, right? Because unless you're bringing in another quarterback, because even if you take the gamble and say, hey, I'm going to bring in Tom Brady, a guy that's like known for coaching players up at like Tampa Bay and teaching them how to win, or I'm going to go get Aaron Rodgers, a guy that like skips camp and like does all this other stuff like away from the team, and he's always in the media, like distracting the players and the team. That's why I don't care if Aaron Rodgers leaves the Packers, right? Get back to Packer football. Just play hard-nosed stuff. And forget about the media. Right? I don't think Aaron Rodgers can win the Super Bowl the way he's been doing it. He needs to, like, step away. But that could just be me. I don't know. Any other things you have to say about Tom Brady or quarterback moves?
you were saying about the Niners and Brady going there, but I think they may be okay with Purdy at quarterback. Like he won, and without, if he doesn't suffer that injury, I think maybe they have a shot at winning that NFC Championship game. I think Purdy got hit early, and he was willing to come back into the game, and still was injured, and still ended up throwing at least 2 more passes with his injury that they didn't really have. They didn't have the depth that they could have or should have been able to carry.
Well, it's a franchise decision, right? I think Purdy could be the guy, and that was such a freak injury. But like, not a lot of QBs, right, have had that injury. It's more like baseball guys. So like, in that, what are you going to do like long term? Are you going to give him time to heal from that? And you have Tom Brady come in where you're kind of learning the game and you're not rushing back. And you can even bring in another quarterback, like another veteran quarterback, just like Josh Johnson or whoever they're going to go with, that can kind of do the preseason stuff. Tom Brady can kind of just come in maybe every once in a while and do whatever. But like Purdy, I think they should give him a shot because like you said, he's winning with that. Everyone kept saying like, oh, Patriots should get back to like Bledsoe. Remember that? No one wanted to stick with Tom Brady even after they won the Super Bowl. They wanted to make him like Nick Foles, right? You're gone. Like, not everyone was like on the Brady bandwagon right away. So like, people wanted him out of there. I think Purdy, they're kind of like, well, you're not as talented as this player. And so that's what he's going to have to fight through. And unfortunately, he had a weird injury. And if I'm him, I'm hoping they bring in Tom Brady, right? Have him teach the team how to win. And if Tom's old, he's old, man. So if he gets hurt, then Purdy could be the hero. To me, that's the way they win. I think you look at that and you say, hey, we have a chance. We're going to bring in Tom Brady. And people say, okay, awesome. Let's do that or whatever. And then where do you go from there? Keep Purdy around, get another cheap vet, and that's it. I don't know what else. Like Tom Brady going to like the Raiders or whatever. Yeah, he wins. Like, does that really help their franchise? Is he going to even win the Super Bowl? Just making the playoffs, like, what does that do? The Cowboys would be the other one. Like, to me, that would be an interesting move for like Aaron Rodgers. Because they seemed like they were close this year. And then the quarterback turnovers, it's like, what are you doing? Just get a guy that's not turning the ball over, and you're probably fine. But I don't know. Maybe we'll look at this more next week. Let's get into the Super Bowl game, because I'm probably not going to go as long. Seems like our show has been like ebb and flowing back and forth between long and short. The pre-show, a lot of people are counting out the Eagles for some reason. I think it's because of all the Patrick Mahomes hype, where I've seen a lot of weird bulletin board stuff for the Eagles, and I honestly think that the Eagles have the better team. I've been saying it for a while, that I like the Eagles going to the Super Bowl and winning it, and I'm sticking with my pick. I don't know if they get it done. I hope Devonta Smith gets it. Jalen Hurts coming through and like just winning with like more of an old school running attack style. Everyone wants to be the flashy passing game stuff, and no one wants to like focus on like the old school. Let's run. Let's have like the quarterback run. Let's do like rugby scrum running, quarterback sneak stuff. Let's go ahead and do all that stuff. And, let's not have our quarterback just run around in circles and throw the ball up. So, 2 contrasting styles, I think. And I hate to see the Eagles win the Super Bowl, but that's who my pick is. What do you think?
I think a big part in this is going to be how healthy Mahomes' leg is. Now, we kind of talked a little bit about it last week with having that high ankle sprain. How much recovery time has he been able to do since the AFC Championship game? If he's hindered, I think it really pushes the needle in the Eagles' favor. If he's close to 100%, I think there's an X factor with Mahomes that with that cast of guys that are playing that he has right now, they play well together. And for Andy Reid, he's been here before with the majority of the guys on that team, that I think like there is that level of consistency that plays to their advantage. You know, I think they definitely have, the Eagles have the more talent, but I think there's a lot of unknowns going in. That are they going to be able to handle the pressure of the big stage?
I don't even know if the Chiefs can do that, though. The Chiefs need, like, everyone's acting like the Chiefs have won 3 Super Bowls when they've won 1. Maybe, like, in 2 or 3 years, I'm wrong, and they've won, like, 3 or 4 Super Bowls. But to me, you gotta, you win all these, like, BS games, but can you actually, like, come out on top? Like, they were dangerously close to losing this season in the playoffs. And I know, playoffs are tough. You have all these great teams right there. But, like, there's nothing telling me or showing me that, like, this Chiefs team is just awesome. It's kind of like they do a lot of good things, right? And they have Mahomes. He's injured. And I don't think you come back from that in 3 weeks, especially because you already played on it once. Now, do you need to be running around as much against the Eagles? I don't know. The Eagles have a good defense, though. They've had a good defense for a while. If you play fantasy, you know, like, the Eagles have a high-scoring defense. They can force turnovers. That's kind of the style they've been playing going back to their other Super Bowl win. And so they've kind of come out of nowhere. The Eagles are kind of built for the future. I've seen some gambling predictions, like, long-term, where they think that next year could be a rematch in the Super Bowl already. And because they're betting long-term on Mahomes, and then this Eagles team kind of staying together and keep winning. So maybe they do run it back to back, whether it's the Chiefs or the Eagles, I don't know. But I think the NFC is wide open unless you get Tom Brady back or Aaron Rodgers to stay in the NFC, which I don't think they're even entertaining, right? I don't know. But that's what I'm waiting. I want to see the styles come out. And to be honest, the Chiefs to me are like in that Twilight Zone era where they're like coming down from their peak. Like, they lose Tyreek Hill. So they don't have like the home run hitter anymore on offense. So they're kind of like slowly going down. Kelsey hasn't been as big of a factor. He's probably getting old. I don't even know how old he is. But like some of the things like that they used to do really well that other people couldn't compete with, now they're able to kind of stop it, and you're hoping that Mahomes takes that next step and becomes the quarterback that can win you the games. But like looking back, there was like a flashback to the Saints beating Peyton Manning in the Super Bowl, and it's like Peyton Manning threw a pick six late. And it's like, is Mahomes going to make that mistake? Is it going to be Hurts that makes that mistake? I don't know. But that's my thoughts on it. I think the Chiefs are on the way down. I think that the Eagles are on the way up. So let's go. The Eagles have a chance to be, I think the Eagles have a better chance to be a dynasty than the Chiefs. Maybe I'm wrong, but the AFC is a whole hell of a lot harder.
Oh, yeah, because Sirianni's a IUP man, so of course they have the long-term success.
That's why everyone hates him. Do you see?
Probably right.
Do you see all the flack he's been getting
No.
It's like crazy, like people disrespecting him and everything, where he's like coming back and like he's using it as motivation. That's like part of the motivation stuff. Someone put together an article of all the motivation things like that they've been getting, because like everyone's just been shitting on the Eagles and their coaching and stuff. And he's like, we're just going to keep doing what we're doing. Like, it's been working. Which to me is like insane. How many people just like talk shit on the coach? Like, it's crazy. Any other big predictions you have for the Super Bowl? Because it's this weekend, so you can listen to this. I know I put it at the end of the show. I'm not looking forward to the commercials or the halftime show or anything. In the past, it's kind of been going downhill to me. Right after last year, didn't they have like the crazy like 50 Cent like just hanging upside down for no reason? Like looked like his head was exploding because all the oxygen was just going right there. All his blood's like rushing to it. His head was like a complete circle, and I was like, "Who is that? Is that 50 Cent?" So now it's like, anytime I see commercials now, it's almost like I'm not used to them, because like with streaming, you can pay to not have them at all. So like watching football and having half the game be commercials is just annoying. And I wish they could speed up the game a bit. And they could. Because they always talk about like, well, we can't really speed up the game. Like, yeah, you could. If anyone's been to a live game, the guy stands on the field with his hand up, waiting for the commercial to be over before the team can run back out. So if they wanted to speed it up, and it's not as bad as college football, let's be honest, because the running clock, the NFL does have their games about like 3 hours. It's a little bit easier to game plan around. So like the Super Bowl starts at like, what, 6:30? Even with the extra festivities, the game will be over by like 10:30, right? So that's my prediction, is that they need to do something big for this game. So I wonder if there'll be like a halftime controversy. Right? We're due. We're due for a nip slip, Matt. So if you can do like prop betting on like a scandal, I wouldn't be surprised if it happened this year. I think the NFL is coming back. They had the extra game. Now the Super Bowl's pushed back. I don't know. But we'll see. What about the Pro Bowl? Did you watch the Pro Bowl?
You know, the Pro Bowl always sneaks up on me. And I knew that they were doing a different format. And I was like, I need to make sure that I see it. And then I still missed like parts of the skills competition, because it's almost like they're trying to just piss everybody off with the way that they're doing it. It's like random night, not publicized. They just be like, oh, and here we are on evening TV, like putting the skills competition on there.
Well, I missed it again because it's always earlier than I expect for some reason, right? And then I'm not like paying attention, and I hate it being this week. Like I almost kind of like it having the skills competition the week before the Super Bowl, because like I'm probably not going to watch either, and then just have the flag football game after. Because to me, like you watch the Super Bowl and you're itching for more football, right? If it's a good game. With the Pro Bowl, you used to be after the Super Bowl. Then you get like guys that have just won the Super Bowl playing in the Pro Bowl, and they're pumped, right? They're showing up. Now you have so many guys sitting out that it's not really a Pro Bowl. It's like, who can we get to play in this game? Like, we can get some of our favorite guys, and we can get some guys that aren't that so favorites, and let's just put them in here. And that's the issue to me. It's not so much the tackling or the flag aspect. It's like when you have multiple quarterbacks sitting out to where like Derek Carr's getting the nod when his team's like ready to fire him. Right? And they're like, hey, you're in. Burrow can't play. It's like, why? Well, he just can't. He's saving up for next year. Like, you're in. Your 3 other guys can't play either. And you're like, what number am I? Does this get to go on my record or my Wikipedia? Can I put this on my Wikipedia? Like, I feel like some of the players, that's why I like the Hall of Fame, when they're like, yeah, this guy had so many Pro Bowl appearances. Like, no. Did they? Like, you should do like an all-pro voting or something instead, like an all-American type vote, where it's like a player can be an all-American and not play in the Senior Bowl because he's an all-American and he's already going to get drafted, right? So it's not like, oh, yeah, you're going to be in the College Football Hall of Fame because you played in the Senior Bowl, baby. It's like, well, were you any good? Or are you just there playing? Because they didn't have that many seniors. And that's not a knock on college people like playing in the Senior Bowl or like the Pro Bowl. Players actually getting picked because they can win money there. Like, you have to think if you're like the 8th best guy and you're like, oh man, if I need 1 or 2 guys to sit out, I have a chance to make $50K or whatever it is this weekend. Hell yeah. I'm not that good. The guys need to be there on the team. So that's my beef with it. I really don't care. It's a weird weekend, so not everyone can play. You're missing your best players from the 2 best teams. And you're doing flag football. I don't want to see flag football, honestly. That's a different sport.
Although I did see Jalen Ramsey decleated Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, I saw that hit, and I'm like...
That was a good one.
I saw that came out, and there was like a bunch of stuff. Like, people are now like tweeting that the NFL's fixed. Have you seen this? Where everything's like a script.
Yeah, Arian Foster made that comment, and the best rebuttal to it was the look on Alex Smith's face when he reads the script that week. He got his leg injury.
Or like I've seen one with it's like when Mason Rudolph realizes he's going to get hit in the head with the helmet. Or like Antonio Brown ripping his shirt off, like whoever wrote that in. Because like there are some of them, like it's like the TO ones. Yeah, they probably have a marketing team writing that shit out where it's like, yo, put a Sharpie in your sock. When you score a touchdown, sign a ball. It'll be all over the TV. Like Antonio Brown, if you're going to go out, man, go out on top, rip your shirt off. And he's probably like, that's a great idea. And then when he's
why
there,
did I think of that?
Yeah, because one of them was like, hey, remember when Antonio Brown read that script that he was going to get CTE from Perfect River? And then, actually, did you see he did it live where he blamed it on James Harrison's illegal helmet? I know you don't keep up with my man AB as much as I do. But he had a live stream where he said that he got CT from James Harrison's illegal helmet. And he knows a lot of other people did too. And he like started blaming a bunch of stuff on James Harrison. And then I was like, pretty funny. Let's see how many people like rip it apart. And then people were putting out all these James Harrison memes about how he ruins everything, going to like the Patriots and stuff, hurting Antonio Brown. So I don't know. I feel bad for that dude, but at least he's doing something funny. He's going out on top. People will remember him. They won't remember like other random Steeler wide receivers, right? Like, do people even remember like Antoine Randall, Hines Ward, maybe because he's coaching in like the XFL or something? But Antonio Brown's going out on top. That could be my final bell. AB updates. I really don't have anything much else. Do you have anything?
No, we appreciate the support and the additional clicks. So tell your friends and continue to check out the website and supporting our work here.
Now's going to be the crazy time. The shows might not be as long because I don't have the energy, but we're going to talk about some other crazy stuff because what is there to talk about? This is a football year-round show now, right? We've been kind of drifting that way. I was looking at the schedule. We should be able to go right into the XFL next week, and then we'll get right into the USFL. They were putting their schedule out. I don't know if it's finalized yet. Did I even send you the tweet? I think I was trying to save it, but I don't think I found the actual one. But the arena football is also returning next year. So that's another thing that we can bring in. And then the other sports will kind of just be on the side. Like when you make fun of my man Barry Bonds for being fat, but not Ken Griffey Jr. Which Barry Bonds, by the way, his hat size is one thing that's like funny to me because the author that wrote the articles about his head size got so fat that his head like tripled in size, so much that he deleted all his photos from all his old articles because people were like, well, your head's getting super fat too, buddy. Are you roiding up? And then I look at pictures and people are like, hey, what's the meme? It's like, hey, these people look 10 years later, one person looks the same and Barry Bonds looks like Brock Lesnar or something like that. And Ken Griffey Jr. now, his head is like as big as Barry Bonds. So it's like maybe they're just getting old and fat, guys. It's not so much about Barry Bonds was just getting older while he was still working out. Now he's in the phase where if he let himself go, if he quit working out, he would be fat too. He might look exactly like Ken Griffey Jr. And then what would everyone say? They'd have nothing. They would have nothing. That's my final bell. You have anything else?
No, that's it.
All right, thanks for listening. Lay off Barry, lay off Tom Brady, two of the greatest to ever do it. You know it. Make sure you subscribe to the show, and we will see you next week.